Hello. Today we're going to talk about quick and easy grammar tips to help you sound more like a native speaker. If you want your English to sound smooth, natural, and fluent, these hacks are perfect for you. Remember, each tip is simple and short. You don't have to know everything to start using these tips. Just keep practicing, and soon you'll see that your English sounds more confident and natural. Let's get started. First, let's talk about contractions. Native speakers use contractions all the time. Contractions are when we shorten two words into one. For example, I am becomes I'm. You are becomes your. They are becomes their. Contractions make sentences shorter and more natural. For example, instead of saying, I am happy to see you, you can say, I'm happy to see you. Instead of saying, they are coming over, you can say, they're coming over. Contractions help you sound friendly and relaxed, just like native speakers. Try using contractions in every sentence where they make sense. It takes a little practice, but it's one of the quickest ways to sound more natural. Another quick tip is to use simple words. Often people learning English think they need to use big or complicated words. But native speakers use simple words most of the time, especially in casual conversation. Instead of saying, I would like to request some assistance, and you can just say, can you help me? Instead of, I am currently engaged in studying English, you can say, I'm studying English. Simple words make sentences clear and easy to understand. Plus, they make you sound more like a native speaker. Remember, less is more. Simple words are powerful, especially when you're speaking. Next, let's talk about gonna and wanna. These are informal ways of saying going to and want to. Native speakers use these words in casual conversations all the time. Instead of saying, I am going to watch a movie, you can say, I'm going to watch a movie. Instead of saying, I want to go to the park, you can say, I want to go to the park. These shortcuts help your sentences flow better and sound more relaxed. Just remember, these are informal, so you should only use them in casual situations. In formal writing, stick to going to and want to. But for conversations, gonna and wanna are great for sounding more like a native. Let's talk about phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are verbs combined with small words like up, down, out, or off. These are very common in English, especially in everyday conversation. For example, instead of saying, I will return the money to you, you can say, I'll pay you back. Instead of saying, I will start the project, you can say, I'll start up the project. Phrasal verbs make your sentences sound natural and conversational. They may seem confusing at first, but once you learn a few, you'll find that they're actually very useful. Some common phrasal verbs are look up, give up, find out, turn off, and take out. Practice using these, and you'll notice a big difference in how you sound. A great tip is to use active voice instead of passive voice. Passive voice sounds more formal and can make sentences feel long and confusing. In active voice, the subject of the sentence does the action. For example, instead of saying, the homework was completed by me, you can say, I completed the homework. It's simpler and easier to understand. Native speakers mostly use active voice because it makes sentences clear and direct. So, whenever possible, try to use active voice. It's a small change, but it makes your English sound stronger and more confident. Now, let's talk about avoiding too many I statements. If you start every sentence with I, it can sound repetitive. Native speakers often mix up their sentences to avoid this. For example, instead of saying, I think it's going to rain, you can say, looks like it's going to rain. Instead of saying, I feel tired today, you can say, today feels tiring. This makes your sentences more interesting and sounds less repetitive. Mixing up your sentences can make you sound more natural, just like a native speaker. Using short responses is another way to sound more fluent. Instead of repeating the entire sentence, native speakers often give short answers. For example, if someone says, are you coming to the party? Instead of saying, yes, I am coming to the party, you can just say, yeah, I am, or yes, I'll be there. Short answers make conversations feel smooth and natural, so don't worry about always giving long answers. Short responses are just as good, and they sound more fluent. Here's another useful tip. When you want to emphasize something, use so or really. Native speakers often say things like, it's so hot today, instead of, it's very hot today, or I really like this song, instead of, I like this song a lot. Using so or really makes your sentences sound more natural. It also shows your emotions more, which is common in everyday English. So, next time, try saying so or really to sound more like a native speaker. Let's talk about using questions to keep conversations going. Native speakers often use short questions to keep the conversation natural and friendly. For example, if someone says, I'm going on a trip, you can ask, oh, where to? Or really? When? These small questions show you're interested and help the conversation flow. Another example is if someone says, I saw a great movie, you can ask, what movie? Or, did you like it? Asking small questions makes conversations feel lively and natural. Another helpful tip is using just in your sentences. Native speakers use just to make sentences sound softer or less direct. For example, instead of saying, I wanted to check if you're free, you can say, I just wanted to check if you're free. Or instead of, I'm saying this is better, you can say, I'm just saying this is better. Adding just makes your sentences sound more polite and friendly, which helps you sound more natural. Native speakers also often use kind of or sort of when they want to sound less direct or make a point softly. For example, instead of saying, I think it's too cold, you can say, I think it's kind of cold. Or instead of, this is difficult, and you can say, this is sort of difficult. Using kind of or sort of makes your sentences sound more casual and friendly. These words show that you're not being too strong or direct, which makes you sound more like a native. Now, let's talk about using you know in conversations. Native speakers often add you know to their sentences to make them feel more relaxed and friendly. For example, instead of saying, I think this place is nice, you can say, I think this place is nice, you know? Or instead of, I like this food, say, I like this food, you know? Using you know is like inviting the listener to agree or understand. It makes your conversation sound more engaging and natural. Another tip is to use actually when you want to correct something or add new information. Native speakers use actually a lot in conversations. For example, if someone says, you're from New York, right? And you're actually from Los Angeles, you can say, actually, I'm from Los Angeles. Or if you want to add something surprising, you can say, I actually love this song to show your enthusiasm. Actually is a simple word, but it helps you sound more like a native by making your corrections or additions sound smoother. Using let me is another great way to sound more natural. Instead of saying, I will check, say, let me check. Instead of saying, I will think about it, say, let me think about it. This phrase sounds casual and relaxed, which helps you sound more fluent and like a native speaker. It's easy to use and can make your English sound more friendly. A very useful tip is using a bit or a little when you want to make something sound softer. For example, instead of saying, I'm tired, you can say, I'm a bit tired. Or instead of, this is difficult, say, this is a little difficult. Adding a bit or a little makes your sentences sound less direct and friendlier. It's a small change, but it makes a big difference in making you sound more natural. Try using I mean to explain something better or give more details. For example, if you say, this is hard, you can add, I mean, it's not easy to understand. Or if you say, I like this book, you can add, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean shows that you are explaining or adding to your point. This phrase is very common in English, and using it will make you sound more fluent. Finally, let's talk about using fillers like well, and you know. Native speakers often use these small words when they're thinking or trying to decide what to say next. They help keep the conversation going and make it sound natural. For example, if you're asked, what did you think of the movie? You might say, Well, I thought it was pretty good. Or if someone asks, are you coming? You could say, yeah, I'll be there. These fillers are helpful when you need a moment to think or don't want to sound too direct. So let's do a quick review. Use contractions to make your sentences shorter. Choose simple words over complicated ones. Try using gonna and wanna in casual conversations. Learn and practice phrasal verbs. Use active voice to make sentences direct. Don't overuse I at the beginning of sentences. Use short responses when possible. Add so or really for emphasis. Ask small questions to keep conversations going. Use just to sound polite and kind of or sort of to make your sentences sound softer. Add you know to engage the listener. Use actually to correct or add information. Try using let me for a natural flow. Add a bit or a little to soften statements. Use I mean to explain, and don't be afraid to use fillers like and for a natural rhythm. One of the easiest ways to sound more natural is to use contractions. Contractions are when we combine two words into one shorter word. For example, I am becomes I'm. You are becomes your. They are becomes their. Contractions make your sentences sound shorter and friendlier. For example, instead of saying, I am going to the store, you can say, I'm going to the store. Instead of she is very nice, say, she's very nice. These small changes make you sound more relaxed and comfortable in English. You might notice that native speakers use contractions all the time, even when they're talking fast. Practice using contractions whenever you can. They are very common, especially in casual conversations. Try saying I'm, your, their, he's, and she's often. After some practice, you won't even have to think about it. Your English will start sounding more natural and fluent. Another simple tip is to use short, everyday words. Sometimes people learning English think that they need to use big or difficult words to sound smart. But in everyday English, native speakers use simple words, especially when they're speaking. For example, instead of saying, I am currently in the process of learning English, you can say, I'm learning English. Or instead of saying, I would like to request some assistance, you can simply say, can you help me? Simple words make your sentences easier to understand, and they make you sound more natural. Remember, you don't need to use big words to sound good in English. Sometimes less is more. Using simple, clear words actually shows confidence. It means you know what you want to say and you don't need fancy words to say it. So try using short, simple words whenever you can. You will find that it makes your conversations much easier and smoother. Let's talk about two casual words that native speakers use a lot: gonna and wanna. These are shorter, more relaxed ways of saying going to and want to. In informal English, I am going to becomes I'm gonna, and I want to becomes I wanna. For example, instead of saying I'm going to watch a movie, you can say I'm going to watch a movie. Or instead of I want to go to the park, say I want to go to the park. These shorter forms are great for making your English sound more relaxed and natural, but remember, gonna and wanna are informal. Use them in casual situations like talking with friends or family. In more formal settings like at work or in writing, it's better to say going to and want to. But for conversations, gonna and wanna can help you sound more like a native speaker. Another way to sound more fluent is by using phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are verbs combined with a small word like up, down, in, out, or off. For example, instead of saying, I will return the money, you can say, I'll pay you back. Instead of, I will start the project, you can say, I'll start up the project. Phrasal verbs make your sentences sound more conversational and natural. Learning a few phrasal verbs can make a big difference. Some common ones are give up, find out, look up, turn off, and take out. These are used all the time in English, especially in everyday situations. Try learning a few phrasal verbs and using them in sentences. They might seem confusing at first, but once you get the hang of them, you'll see that they're very useful. Let's talk about using the active voice. The active voice is when the subject of the sentence does the action. It's more direct and makes sentences shorter and clearer. In contrast, the passive voice is when something is done to the subject. For example, instead of saying, the homework was finished by me, say, I finished the homework. Or instead of, the report was written by Sarah, say, Sarah wrote the report. Active voice makes your English sound more confident and easier to understand. Native speakers prefer active voice because it is direct and clear. When you use active voice, your sentences feel stronger and more lively. So, try to use active voice whenever you can. It's a small change, but it makes a big difference in making your English sound natural and fluent. Here's a simple tip. Don't start every sentence with I. Using I too much can sound repetitive and can make conversations feel less interesting. Instead, try to mix up your sentences. For example, instead of saying, I think it's going to rain, you could say, looks like it's going to rain. Instead of saying, I feel tired today, try saying, today feels tiring. Native speakers often avoid using I repeatedly by changing their sentences a little. Mixing up your sentences like this can make you sound more fluent. It also makes conversations feel more natural and friendly. Practice changing your sentences, and you'll see how it helps keep the conversation interesting. Using short responses can also make you sound more natural. Native speakers don't always repeat full sentences when answering questions. For example, if someone asks, are you coming to the party? Instead of saying, yes, I am coming to the party, you can just say, yeah, I am, or yes, I'll be there. Short responses make conversations feel smooth and relaxed. There's no need to give long answers if a short answer will do. In English, short responses are just as good, and they can make you sound more fluent. Try it out, and you'll notice how natural it feels to keep your responses short. When you want to emphasize something, try using so or really. Native speakers often say things like, it's so hot today, or I really like this song. Instead of saying, it's very good, say, it's so good. Or instead of, I like this a lot, say, I really like it. Using so and really helps you show more feeling in your sentences. It makes what you're saying sound more natural and shows that you're expressing emotion. This is common in everyday English, so try using so or really when you want to emphasize something. A good way to keep conversations going is by asking small questions. Native speakers often ask quick questions to show they're interested. For example, if someone says, I'm going on a trip, you can ask, oh, where to? Or, really? When? These small questions keep the conversation moving and show that you're interested in what the other person is saying. Another example, if someone says, I saw a great movie, you can ask, what movie? Or, did you like it? Asking small questions like these makes conversations feel more natural. It's a simple way to sound friendly and keep people talking. You can also add the word just to your sentences to make them sound softer. For example, instead of saying, I wanted to check if you're free, you could say, I just wanted to check if you're free. Or instead of, I'm saying this is better, you can say, I'm just saying this is better. Adding just makes your sentences sound polite and friendly. Just is a small word, but it makes a big difference. It softens what you're saying and makes your sentences feel more relaxed. Try adding just in casual conversations and you'll see how it helps your English sound more natural. Native speakers often use kind of or sort of to make statements sound softer. Instead of saying, I think it's too cold, you could say, I think it's kind of cold. Or instead of saying, this is difficult, you could say, this is sort of difficult. Using kind of or sort of makes your sentences sound more casual. These phrases are common when native speakers don't want to sound too direct. They make what you're saying feel lighter and more relaxed. You can use kind of or sort of to soften your statements, which can help you sound more natural. Another small word that native speakers use a lot is you know. You can add you know to the end of a sentence to make it sound more casual and friendly. For example, instead of saying, I think this place is nice, say, I think this place is nice, you know? Or instead of, I like this food, Say, I like this food, you know? Adding you know is like inviting the other person to agree with you. It makes your sentences feel friendlier and more engaging. Try adding you know to some of your sentences. It's a simple trick, but it helps you sound more like a native. You can also use the word actually when you want to add new information or correct something. For example, if someone says, you're from New York, right? And you're actually from California, you can say, actually, I'm from California. Or if you want to add something surprising, you can say, I actually love this song to show extra feeling. Using actually helps you make corrections or add extra details in a natural way. It's a simple word, but it makes a big difference in how your sentences sound. Try using let me when you want to sound friendly and relaxed. For example, instead of saying, I will check, say, let me check. Or instead of, I will think about it, say, let me think about it. Using let me makes your sentences sound more conversational. This is a small change, but it can make your English sound more natural. Native speakers use let me often when they're speaking, so try adding it to some of your sentences. It makes you sound more fluent and comfortable in English. Another good tip is to use a bit or a little when you want to make something sound softer. For example, instead of saying, I'm tired, say, I'm a bit tired. Or instead of saying, this is difficult, say, this is a little difficult. Adding a bit or a little softens your statements. It makes them feel less direct and more polite. Native speakers use these phrases all the time to keep conversations friendly and light. If you want to explain something, try using I mean. For example, if you say, this is hard, you can add, I mean, it's not easy to understand. Or if you say, I like this book, you can add, I mean, it's really interesting. Using I mean shows that you're explaining or adding something. This phrase is very common in English, and it helps you sound more fluent. Lastly, don't be afraid to use small words like I, well, and you know. Native speakers often use these words when they're thinking or need a moment. For example, if someone asks, what did you think of the movie? You might say, well, I thought it was pretty good. Or if someone asks, are you coming? You could say, yeah, I'll be there. These fillers make your English sound natural and relaxed. They give you time to think and keep the conversation going. So, let's go over these tips one more time. Use contractions, choose simple words, try gonna and wanna in conversations, learn some phrasal verbs, use active voice, avoid starting every sentence with I, give short answers, use so or really for emphasis, ask small questions, add just to sound polite, use kind of or sort of to make statements softer. Try adding you know at the end of sentences. Use actually to add details. Try let me for a friendly tone. Use a bit or a little to soften statements. Say I mean to explain. And don't be afraid to use fillers like and Practice these tips, and you'll see how much more natural your English sounds. Keep practicing, and you'll feel more confident speaking. Thank you for watching, and I hope these tips make you feel more confident speaking English. Remember, practice makes perfect, so keep using these hacks in your conversations. Soon you'll see a big improvement in how natural your English sounds. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any future tips. Happy practicing, and see you next time.